Let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly rested? Not just asleep, but restored. Do you wake up tired even after 7 hours of sleep? Your labs are normal, but you feel off. You're successful, but you secretly feel depleted. You hold everything together, but no one would ever guess how thin it feels. If you're listening while multitasking, planning dinner, answering email, holding a child, driving between obligations, this episode is for you. I'm Dr. Marino, and today we're talking about something I see every single week in clinic, and that is the overworked woman. The woman who gets things done, the woman who everyone relies on, the woman who never drops the ball, the overworked woman who thinks she just needs to try harder, when what she actually needs is a reset. So stay with me until the end because I'm going to give you practical steps you can start today. But first, we need to talk about what's actually happening under the surface. Burnout doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like snapping at your kids, forgetting simple things, waking up exhausted, gaining weight despite eating well, losing your libido, crying in the car for no reason, and most women assume it's a mindset issue. It's not. It's physiology. There are 4 main drivers of burnout in women that are rarely discussed together. And when you understand them, you stop blaming yourself and you start working with your biology, because high functioning does not mean well regulated, and many capable women are running on stress chemistry. So what are those 4 drivers of burnout? Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. It helps you wake up. It regulates your blood sugar, maintain blood pressure, influence your immunity. It stabilizes your mood, supports your metabolism. But the problem is, it's not the cortisol itself, it's the chronic elevation. Women tend to have a higher baseline cortisol reactivity, so our spikes are larger in response to emotional or social stress. And we have slower recovery after those spikes. So if you're managing relationship, career pressure, household logistics, and emotional regulation all day, your cortisol may never fully drop. Chronic elevation affects sleep quality, insulin sensitivity, thyroid conversion, abdominal fat storage, mood stability. So when you say I'm exhausted but wired, you're not being dramatic. That's cortisol dysregulation. And over time, this becomes brain fog, afternoon crashes, nighttime wake-ups between 2 and 3 a.m., increased anxiety. That's not a sign that your body is broken. It's just signaling overload. Now let's talk about something less measurable but just as powerful, and that's the invisible workload. Women often manage career, household logistics, children's schedule, aging parents, relationship dynamics, your health appointments, the emotional temperature of the family. And many of these are roles that we love. But love does not make them weightless. Research consistently shows that women perform significantly more unpaid labor and emotional regulation work. That's constant anticipating, planning, monitoring, pre-adjusting. It keeps your stress response subtly activated all day. So even when you're sitting still, your brain is running operations. And biologically, your body does not distinguish between being chased by a tiger and 37 unread email, because stress is stress. So your nervous system doesn't power down, and that's why you can feel exhausted even on a light day, because your body never fully exits alert mode. We've been told multitasking is a superpower. Biologically though, it's expensive. Every time you switch tasks, your brain burns more glucose and oxygen. Attention fragments, memory retention drops, emotional reactivity increases. You're exhausting your executive function. Now, it's not that you can't multitask, it's just that it costs you. So chronic task switching will contribute to decision fatigue, irritability, reduced creativity, deeper exhaustion by the time evening comes. And here's what that does hormonally. Your blood sugar fluctuation increase, your cortisol follows, your sleep becomes lighter, your recovery becomes incomplete, and you're not inefficient, you're just overloaded. Now let's talk about the emotional stress and the hormonal sensitivity. Women's brain are wired for connection. That is just beautiful. But it also means we process stress relationally. Oxytocin, which is your bonding hormone, amplifies connection and emotional sensitivity. Your serotonin stabilizes your mood, your sleep, and your cognition. Women have 30 to 50% lower serotonin synthesis compared to men. So when stress is chronic, it just feels heavier. Recovery is slower. And to that combination, you add PMS, postpartum shift, perimenopause, menopause, and the stress perception just magnifies. So, if cortisol stays high, serotonin drops, endorphins are lagging, your workload doesn't stop, your body will eventually shift into survival mode. That is also called the allostatic overload, and that is basically cumulative wear and tear on the body. And what that tells us is that the system, your body, has exceeded its adaptive capacity. So symptoms that you may see in those cases: brain fog, sugar cravings, weight gain, insomnia, heightened anxiety, feeling emotionally fragile, low libido. That's not weakness. It is accumulated stress biology. So at the end, it's not that you're lazy. It's not that you're unmotivated. You're not failing. But your body is carrying a load that it was never meant to manage alone. And that's just medical reality. Now, I need to say something clearly. Self-care doesn't always fix it, because bubble baths do not reverse cortisol dysregulation. A yoga class is not going to undo 10 years of hypervigilance. Green juice does not fix fragmented sleep cycle. Self-care is not the same as nervous system recalibration. And that's where most women get frustrated, because you're doing all of the right things. You are treating the symptoms. You're not treating the physiology behind it. So here's the part that no one is truly teaching, and that is burnout is not random. It's what happens that when 4 biological systems just fall out of regulation at the same time. So instead of just coping better, we need a framework that restores regulation. I call it the 4 pillars of female regulation, and the overworked woman reset is how you begin to rebuild them. Pillar 1 is your nervous system regulation, and what it does is that it counters the cortisol overload. If cortisol dysregulation is the fire, then your nervous system regulation is basically the extinguisher. And this is where we have a 60-second reset, which I'll talk about a little bit later. It is the first step in the overworked woman reset. So inhaling for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 2, exhaling for 6. This is your first step in resetting. The longer you exhale, you're activating the vagus nerve to signal to the brain you're safe. Because without safety, the cortisol is not going to drop. Without the cortisol dropping, sleep is not going to get better. Without sleep restoring, hormonal stabilization is not going to happen. So this isn't just breathing, it's biochemical interruption. Pillar 2 is the metabolic stability. And that's where we counter that multitasking energy crash that can happen. Now, multitasking and cognitive load, they burn glucose aggressively. And if blood sugar is unstable, cortisol will compensate. So metabolic stability becomes foundational. In the reset, this is what you see. First thing in the morning, within an hour of waking up, you have to have your protein. That helps reduce constant grazing throughout the day. The other thing is resistance training 2 to 3 times per week is very important in metabolic stability, because when glucose stabilizes, cortisol doesn't need to spike as often. Your energy becomes steady, your brain fog will decrease. That is basically stabilizing your internal fuel system. Pillar 3 is your hormonal rhythm, and that counters that emotional and hormonal sensitivity. When your stress accumulates, your progesterone will drop. That leads to sleep fragmentation. Your cycle symptoms are going to start intensifying, and your hormonal rhythm is going to be all over the place. So how do we restore that? Consistent sleeping. Morning sunlight exposure, even for 15 minutes of sunlight, walking outside, getting some fresh air, and understanding your cycle phases. So that way you're going to stop fighting your physiology and you're going to start working with it. In the reset, this is pretty simple, because once you start protecting your sleep like it's clinical treatment, you start feeling how everything in your body, especially hormonally, goes back into balance. So protect your sleep like it's a clinical treatment, because it is. And my fourth pillar is something that no one really discuss in medical training or discuss medically, and that is the identity alignment. That is more socially, I would say, or societal. High functioning women are often rewarded for self-abandonment. The invisible workload is not just logistical, it is sometimes identity based. So if I don't do it, it won't get done. If I slow down, it will be perceived as if I'm failing. If I say no, I'm selfish. So in this fourth pillar, what I usually ask is, are you high functioning because you choose to be, or because you fear what happens if you stop? And that is where the reset becomes boundary based. I highly recommend that you set one boundary this week. Delegate. Because rest is not laziness, rest is regulation. All this to say that the overworked woman reset, they're not random tips. They're not social media hacks or this new high thing that's on the internet. It is about interrupting the cycle before burnout becomes your identity. It is regulating your nervous system. It's stabilizing your metabolism. It is about restoring your hormonal rhythm and reclaiming your identity. All of that is how you move from burnout to resilience. So I'm going to quickly repeat those steps in the Overworked Women reset. Number 1 is your 60-second nervous system reset. Inhale for 4 seconds. You hold for 2, you exhale for 6 seconds, and you repeat this cycle 5 times. The longer exhale is stimulating the vagus nerve to tell your body that it's safe. And safety is the antidote to chronic stress. It takes just 1 minute, and that is why I love actually doing that in clinic. I see the heart rate dropping and improving by the time we finish that 1 minute of breathing exercise. Number 2, it's releasing the superwoman myth. Delegating is not failure, like I said before. Rest is not laziness. Asking for help is not a weakness, it is actually medicine, because burnout often hides under the identity of capable. Lean onto your support system, because your strength does not disappear when you share the load. Set one boundary per week, or at the very least start this week, and that is my third step. You do not have to be everything for everybody. You establish boundaries for yourself and for your surrounding, and that is one of the best medicine that you can do for yourself, because one small no today is protecting your future energy. And lastly, 15-minute daily recharge, non-negotiable. No phone, no productivity goal, no optimization, just restoration, just you and your breath, because sometimes your nervous system needs some unscheduled stillness. And I do recommend learning your physiology, because when you understand what your cortisol, your thyroid, your iron, and your sex hormones are doing, you stop guessing and you start optimizing. So ladies, you deserve to breathe. You deserve to exist, not just function. So from this point forward, I want us to shift from coping to correcting. So in our next episode, when we talk about the labs that every woman over 25 should know, we will truly understand what optimal also really means. Because I want to say this, you do not need to collapse before you are allowed to recalibrate. You do not need a diagnosis to justify rest, and you do not need burnout as proof that you've done enough. If this resonated with you, share it with a woman who looks fine but probably isn't. I'm Dr. Marino. Thank you for joining me today. And remember to reset, recharge, and elevate. See you for our next episode.